Long ago, in a land of rolling hills and great armies, a battle was brewing. On one side stood the Israelites, a nation chosen by God. On the other side, the mighty Philistines, led by a warrior unlike any other. This was no ordinary warrior. He was a giant named Goliath, towering above everyone, his voice booming across the valley. For 40 days, he challenged the Israelites, but no one dared to face him. That is, until a young shepherd named David arrived. He wasn't a soldier, he had no armor, no sword, but he had something far greater: faith in God and a heart full of courage. This is the story of how David faced Goliath and how the smallest among us can rise to do the greatest things. A long time ago, in the land of Israel, there was a great war between the Israelites and the Philistines. Each army stood on a hill, separated by a deep valley. Every day, from the Philistine camp, came a giant of a man named Goliath. Goliath was no ordinary warrior. He stood over 9 feet tall, towering above everyone else. His armor gleamed in the sunlight, bronze from head to toe, and he carried a spear so massive, just the tip weighed as much as a small child. Day after day, Goliath walked into the valley and shouted his challenge. Goliath's voice echoes in the distance, menacing and loud. "Send one man to fight me. If he can defeat me, the Philistines will serve you. But if I win, you will serve us." For 40 days, Goliath mocked the Israelites. His voice echoed through the camp, filling the soldiers with fear. Not one man dared to step forward. They saw his size, his strength, and his confidence, and they felt powerless. But one day, something unexpected happened. A young shepherd named David arrived at the Israelite camp. David wasn't a soldier. He was the youngest of 8 brothers, sent by his father to deliver food to his brothers, who were part of the army. Sounds of a bustling camp, horses, soldiers talking, and David's footsteps. When David arrived, he heard Goliath's taunts. David was shocked. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Who is this Philistine to insult the armies of the living God?" David asked. The soldiers around him laughed. Music shifts to a lighter tone, reflecting David's confidence. "Do you see how big he is?" one soldier said. "No one can defeat him." But David stood firm. It doesn't matter how big he is. God is bigger. Word of David's boldness quickly spread through the camp. Soon David was brought before King Saul. In the king's tent, David bowed respectfully before Saul. Saul looked at him and shook his head. "You are just a boy," the king said, "and Goliath has been a warrior since his youth. How can you fight him?" David smiled. "I have faced danger before," he said. "When a lion or a bear came to take one of my sheep, I chased it, struck it, and rescued the lamb. God protected me then, and he will protect me now." Saul paused, then finally nodded. "Go," he said, "and may the Lord be with you." The king offered David his own armor, but it was too big and heavy. David couldn't even walk in it. "No," David said, "I will fight with what I know." David went to a nearby stream and picked up 5 smooth stones. He put them in his pouch, grabbed his sling, and walked into the valley to face Goliath. When Goliath saw David, he threw back his head and laughed. Goliath's voice booms. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? Come here, boy, and I'll feed your flesh to the birds." David stopped and stood firm. "You come against me with a sword and a spear," David called out, "but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty. Today, he will give me victory, and everyone will know that the Lord saves, not with swords or spears, but through his power." David reached into his bag and pulled out 1 stone. He placed it in his sling and began to spin it. With a swift motion, David let the stone fly. The stone struck Goliath right in the forehead. The giant staggered, his knees buckled, and he fell face down to the ground with a thunderous crash. The Philistines were stunned. their mighty warrior, defeated by a shepherd boy. Fear filled their hearts, and they turned and ran. The Israelite army cheered and chased after them, winning a great victory that day. David became a hero, but he knew it wasn't his strength that defeated Goliath. It was his faith in God. This story reminds us that no matter how big our challenges may seem, with faith, courage, and trust in God, we can overcome anything.